Today on the Front Row Dads podcast, we welcome back Dr. Robert Glover. He is a relationship and intimacy expert and author of the bestseller, No More Mr. Nice Guy. He has dedicated his career to helping men overcome the self-defeating nice guy syndrome. He teaches guys to prioritize their needs, establish healthy boundaries, and embrace their authentic self. Dr. Glover empowers men to build fulfilling relationships, increase confidence, and navigate modern marriage dynamics with genuine masculinity and purpose. The question is about where does nice guy syndrome and boundaries actually play a role in men having relationship with other men? Because I've only ever discussed boundaries as it relates to my wife or my children. I've only ever discussed being a nice guy as it relates to my wife or dating or attracting women.
Okay.
But I've never looked at the lens of like, where do my nice guy tendencies actually hurt my ability to be in a brotherhood, to be in the band, or a lack of boundaries would prevent me from either leaning into that group or having success within that group. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, man. If I
is that a question?
Yeah.
Is that a question?
The question is, how does that?
How do boundaries show up between men and men?
Yes. No, between men and men, like men
and men. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a good question. Boundaries, they're an interesting animal. So let's talk about boundaries.
Yeah.
And if I veer off from that question, bring me back to it. Okay. If I have a Biden moment, forget where I am and what I'm talking about. All right. So I did not learn about boundaries until I was in my 30s, in my second marriage, and I already had a PhD in marriage and family therapy. I'd never heard of boundaries. And I went to a therapist, it was a woman therapist, and very first session with her, she said, let's talk about boundaries. And I don't know if she did that with like every client in her first session, or if she could just tell, this guy needs the boundary talk. So we were meeting in her house, and she had this big space and kind of a basement area, and she put a big string on the ground as a line. And she said, you stand on that side, I'm gonna stand on this side. That's your boundary. That's where that's your space, this is my space. She said, I'm going to come into your space. I'm going to step over your boundaries. I'm going to put my hands on your shoulders. I'm going to push you backwards. Stop me when you begin to feel uncomfortable. And probably everything she said probably had exact, precise meaning to it. Like, stop me when you begin to feel uncomfortable. She didn't say, tell me to stop. And she said, stop me. And so I'm going, okay. I had no clue where this is going and what we were doing. So here's a line on the ground, and I stand probably 2 feet, 2 steps behind the line, because I didn't know what a boundary was, or that it's my job to assert my boundaries and be at my boundaries and enforce my boundaries. I didn't know all that stuff yet. It's just a string on the ground. So I'm back about 2 feet because I'm a nice guy. Why would I get right up on the string? That's kind of aggressive. That's not very nice. I should let her, cross the line. I didn't think all that, but that practice demonstrated what was in my nervous system. So she comes across, and like I said, she's a few years older than me. Not a very big woman, Mormon, religious person, so not a big aggressive person. Puts her hands on my shoulders and starts pushing me back. And I start backpedaling a little bit, and I say, okay, stop. Well, she kept pushing. I go, stop. And she kept pushing. And I'm getting closer to the wall behind me. And my junior high school football training came in, got down into linebackers, stance, got solid, got like this. And I stopped her. I stopped us from moving any further. And she got this big smile on her face, like, yeah, you're kind of like, that's it. That's what I was supposed to do. That's the prize. So then she described boundaries to me. And the reason why I had not heard about boundaries till I was in my 30s is that we, up until maybe recently, we're in a culture that doesn't talk about boundaries and surely doesn't demonstrate healthy boundaries. And the primary reason why that is that when you're little, a child, as we all were, the big people get to do whatever they want to the little people. I mean, in our world, it's still that way, right? Nothing's changed in the world. And the big, powerful people can do whatever they want to the less powerful people. Every war, every conflict, every social thing, all racism, all of that's just bigger, powerful people doing what they want to the less powerful people. And so when you're a child, your big brothers, big sisters, they can do whatever they want to you. They can beat you up. They can, tie you up. They can lock you in closets, whatever. Your parents can do whatever they want, kind of like Bill Cosby. I brought you into this world. I can take you out of this world. They can do, they can spank you, punish you, make you go to bed, make you eat this stuff, make you whatever. You have no rights, no freedoms, no, really, in most families, no voice. I've talked quite a bit about the process of differentiation, where at about 2 years old, a child, their brain develops enough where they can say, myself, I want, no. They start throwing tantrums when they don't get their way. In every culture, people I've talked to, we call it the terrible twos. Why is differentiation terrible? Why is the person saying, I want, I don't want, stop, myself? Why is that terrible? It's self-preserving. It's part of natural brain development and human development.
Gentlemen, Front Row Dads Live is coming up December 4th through the 6th in Austin, Texas. It's a one-of-a-kind event for men who want to win at home and in business. After last year's event, one of our attendees, Eric, said, Front Row Dads Live created the perfect space to go deep with other men, and it inspired massive changes in every area I needed it. Here I found community, purpose, and a better understanding of who I am meant to be as a father, husband, and leader. Go now to frontrowdads.com/live for more information.
So from the time a child is little, everybody else gets to do to them whatever they want. So we then grow up and, the teachers can do to us, the kids in the grade above us can do to whatever they want. The coaches can do whatever they want. The priests can do whatever they want. Police can do whatever they want. The vice principal can do whatever they want. Military, everywhere in life. We grow up where everybody can do whatever they want to us. And because nobody ever said, hey, at some age, you actually get to start saying no, or I want, or I'm going to remove myself, or if you do that again, we're done. Nobody teaches you that, right? Because if they did teach us that, there's a risk we would start doing that with them. And no, we don't want that. So we all were little children where the big people could do whatever they wanted. We then grow up to be adults, and it doesn't cross our mind that we can assert ourselves, that we can decide where is our space, who gets to come into our space, what do they get to do while they're in the space, how long can they stay, how close do they get, when is it time for them to leave, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. We don't even think that way because nobody ever taught us or trained us to think that way or modeled that kind of behavior. Now, more and more we see that. More and more parents teach their children now. If anybody makes you uncomfortable, if anybody touches you, if anybody that, there is more of that. You're in charge of you. You're in charge of your body. But still, I think throughout probably all of culture, there still is the powerful get to do whatever they want to the less powerful. And children are inherently less powerful. That gets ingrained in our nervous system, so we grow up to be adults. And there's different ways we can do with it. Some people react to that by getting aggressive. There's not a conflict that they'll walk away from. Anything, a good fight. But in terms of nice guys, most nice guys, because we want the peace, we'll go along to get along. We don't want to upset anybody. We don't want anybody mad at us. We don't want anybody to leave us. We don't want anybody to shame us. So we try to, finesse every situation to try to make sure it goes okay and nobody gets upset. Nobody gets mad at us or hurt or angry with us. And going back to the attraction thing, in terms of a man doing that, it makes him highly unattractive to women. My second wife, who I was married to when I started doing my own work, my nice guy work, and whom I was married to when I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy, she used to say to me, she said, if you can't stand up to me, how will I ever know you can stand up for me?
Ooh.
I thought, well, I got it. And then she'd say, I'm just a little girl making noise. And when I see you get all panicky and like, oh, I got to make it better, I got to fix it, she goes, that doesn't feel good and it doesn't turn me on. And she was right about those things. If a woman is a security-seeking creature, looks to the man in her life to be the security system, yeah, she can probably, buy her own car, pay her own bills, call the police, get her own security system. But for emotional, if she sees a guy can't stand up to her and can't stand up to his mother and can't stand up to his buddies or his boss, that's not a turn on, not a turn on. So this whole thing about boundaries, I say that they allow people to get close to us. And another fundamental part about it is that boundaries are not about getting someone else to be different. They're about getting us to be different. Mm-hmm. See, when people start learning about boundaries, we often, we turn it into a control mechanism, or we weaponize it, or we do a lot of different. We become kamikaze boundary setters. We get out a chainsaw when a fly swatter might have done. And so it's a process of learning, and it's a messy process. When I was working with couples, I'd have a couple in my office, and I would do the string on the ground with the guy and show him boundaries so his wife would feel safe, blah, blah, blah. And I've had countless women, not making this up, would applaud when I'd show her their husband how to set boundaries. And the guy would look at his wife and say, "You mean you want me to stand up to you, dear?" And she goes, "Yeah, I don't want to think my husband's a little boy and I can walk all over him." It's kind of like my ex said, "Can't stand up to me. How will I know you stand up for me?" And so I tell the guy, she's telling you the truth. She wants you to set boundaries. She'll feel safer. She'll be more secure. Because she also knows if you don't set boundaries with her, maybe you don't set boundaries with women at work. Maybe you don't set boundaries with your mother. Maybe you don't set boundaries with your ex. So, and if you want to talk about boundary issues and nice guys, get a couple together where the man has an ex-wife who was a professional boundary invader, and maybe a kid or two, and maybe a mother and get the new girlfriend or wife involved, and she's just watching her boyfriend basically cave to every significant woman in his life. That does not feel safe. And now, so usually what the woman to do is start trying to control that. I'm working with a guy where his girlfriend basically forbade him to go to his daughter's wedding because his ex-wife would be there, and because nobody in his family likes the girlfriend, because I don't know that I would either. She said, "Well, you can't go to your daughter's wedding." I go, "What?" But the thing was, I understand her point of view. She's seen this guy have absolutely no boundaries with his mother. His mother says, jump, and he says, "How high?" And he's in his 50s, right? So boundaries are crucial for people to feel safe, for us to get close to each other, because if I don't know I can set a boundary with you, if I can't say, "Hey, let's go do this." "Oh, okay, it's time for you to go." Or "Hey man, you owe me some money." Or if we can't do the boundary, I'm either going to avoid you completely or put some kind of wall between us, a brick wall, solid wall. And that's what happens in almost every relationship where people don't know how to set boundaries. So, as you say, I learned about this primarily in the context of intimate relationship, because that was, I was married. I had a wife who was a professional boundary invader. My mother was a professional boundary invader. I was very close to my mother growing up. And once I got into therapy and started learning about boundaries, and my then wife started saying, your mother really, emotionally incests you. And she made my mother made a comment to that wife one time. "I saw him naked before you did." Kind of like, mind your territory, bitch. He's mine. And every woman that I've had any significant relationship, and my present wife tells me this with regularity, "I think your mother's jealous of me." And I've learned to say, "Yeah, I suspect you're right." But when I started setting boundaries with my mother, I was in my mid-30s, and she would call up and want to complain about my father. Well, I'd listened to her complain about my dad since I was 2. And I started setting boundaries, say, "Mom, he's my dad. You're still married to him. I'll talk with you about anything, just not complaints about Dad." Oh, that just upped the game. She, would push every time we'd talk. She would bring up, she'd start talking about their sex life and her complaints about that. And just, she would guilt me. She got passive aggressive. She'd cry. She told me her therapist said I was trying to control her. Okay. So I finally just had to quit talking to my mom. I didn't talk to her for 15 years. And then when my father had a stroke and then was in hospice for about 10 days, she and I hashed everything out. And I think we have a pretty supportive boundaried relationship now. I will grieve when she dies. I already know that. I will miss the ability to go spend time with her. We're a lot alike. I see a lot of her in me, and probably sees a lot of me in her. So I had to learn to set boundaries, and it led to me not having that connection, for 15 years. So it can lead to that. So bringing it back to the men thing, there's really no reason why it would be any different with men. And I've seen men that have relationships with men where one man maybe takes advantage of them, or owes them money, Or I'll give you an example. I haven't talked really much about this publicly, but I had a friend, I considered him my best friend for a number of years. And without going into detail of the patterns, there was one pattern where we'd be close and then kind of like he'd ghost me, you know. Wouldn't hear or see from him 6 months, a year or so, and then all of a sudden he'd come back around again. And I loved him, and I really enjoyed the things we did together. He was an adventurer. I'm not so much. I'm the guy that likes my routines. I'll go to the same restaurant, order the same thing. But if somebody says, Robert, let's go do this, you know, Robert, come to Austin. We'll do, okay, yeah, great. Hey, Robert, let's do a peyote ceremony. Okay, I'm in. I don't go looking to do those things, but I'll say yes to them. And he was that kind of friend where, you know, he would just, let's do it. Okay, I'm in. And so I liked that. I valued that. And he was funny and smart and just, I liked him a lot. And 2 or 3 times over maybe a period of 8 or 10 years, he kind of did that ghosting thing where just disappear and come back around. And then there was a pattern where, again, without going into detail, something happened between him and the woman I was dating. He asked me, you know, Robert, would you be okay if I did such and such? And I go, not really. That would be weird. Please don't do that. And to this day, I'm not really sure what he did, because neither he nor the ex-girlfriend went into detail. But later, when I started dating the woman who's now my wife, and I mentioned that this friend of mine was coming for a visit, she said, well, I hope he treats your girlfriend, your present girlfriend, with more respect than he did your last one. Mm. I thought, Mom, thank you. Mm. And he shows up and starts doing the same pattern, basically of grooming kind of behavior, sexually, with my girlfriend. You know, telling off-color jokes, and she's now my wife. And I thought, no, not going to happen again. Mm. And I ended the relationship, and it was hard because he was my best friend. Mm. And at that time, I didn't have a lot of other close males in my life. That's when I decided to go get in a men's program and went to work on creating a lot of close men, because I realized I couldn't get by on just 1, maybe 2 good guy friends to sustain me in life. So yeah, I did have to set a boundary. And as I said, the ultimate ability to set a boundary is your willingness and ability to remove yourself. Mm. Children can't. That's why they can't set boundaries. A lot of people in relationships can't, because they're not willing to remove themselves, whether it's a little bit or a lot. But you've got to be willing to say, you know, if you do that again, there's going to be that XY consequence. Or if you want to hang out with me, you have to do it. You can't do it that way. You have to do it this way. Now, it's not being controlling. It's just laying down the terms of how you will, you know, hang out with somebody. And it can be as simple as, I remember, again, my ex, she'd be on the phone just, you know, going off on me, complaining this or that. And I got to her and said, call me back when you're in a better mood. That was a boundary. Mm-hmm. I didn't say quit complaining or quit doing that. And I'd get off the phone. 45 minutes later, she'd call back. I think I know what was bothering me. Okay. Mm. I let her work it out. I remember one time, she and I were going somewhere. And again, that's why I'm telling you stories about my ex, because that's where I learned to set boundaries. I'm really grateful for her, because we're sitting here having this conversation because of her. And
that's a great perspective.
Well, it is. I don't know. I maybe would have gotten into therapy and self-improvement without her, but she was the big push. Yeah. And I'm grateful for that, and always will be. But I remember we were going somewhere one Saturday morning, and she was just bitching, just bitchy. And me, I'm always trying to, you know, walk on eggshells, make it better, make it good. And we get in the car, and we're driving. I don't know where we're going, but I go to start the car. And I think she might have bitched about the way I started the car. I don't know. And I don't know where this came from, but I turned the car off. I unbuckled my seatbelt. I turned towards her, and I said, listen, you've been bitching at me all morning long. I'm not going to spend the day doing this. If you're angry with me about something, give it all to me right now. But I'm not going to do this little pick kind of thing anymore, so give it to me. And she just slumped down and goes, I'm sorry, I just woke up in a bad mood. And I thought, wow, how come I didn't do that, you know, before? It's like when I just, you know, even the boundary was, if you're going to pick at me, tell me what you're really angry about. Give it all to me. And come to find out there wasn't anything. It's just that she was, in a bitchy mood, and I was letting her. So until I was willing to draw a line and say, no, we're not going to do it that way. If we're going to, if you're going to be angry, you're going to give me all the anger. You're going to tell me what it is. We're going to deal with it. So I say that healthy boundaries should call every person involved into a higher consciousness. It's not just, you got to stop doing that, or, I'm leaving, or I'm out of here. And a really simple way I teach people, kind of boundaries 101, that if somebody does something and it hurts, or you feel slighted, or, you didn't like it, it's this real simple little procedure. You go, ouch. Starting with the ouch is just something about it. You go, ouch. That gets people's attention. Yeah. Yeah. You're not punching them. You're not yelling. You go, ouch. That hurt. Did you mean it to? Ouch. That felt dismissive. Did you mean it to? Or, ouch. That felt like a put down. Did you mean it to be? Now, the ouch gets their attention. There's an emotional context to it now, right? That hurt me. I'm letting you know that hurt me. I'm giving you important information. And then I identify how it's not really a feeling to say that felt dismissive, or, that hurt. Saying it hurt is a feeling. But saying how it landed with you, and then asking them if that's what they meant, rather than saying, you were a dick to me, or you did that, or, you got to quit doing that. You say, this is how it landed, this is how it felt. Did you mean it that? And if the person goes, no, man, I'm sorry, man, I didn't. My apologies. Maybe it was a bad joke. Maybe I wasn't being thoughtful. And so they come into higher consciousness. They own it. They did something that was hurtful to someone that they probably care about. And I like to know if I hurt somebody. I was dating a woman one time. She was my home decorator. That's how I met her. And then we started dating. I remember we were driving in the car one time, and I said, listen, if we're going to keep seeing each other, I know I can be a dick. I can say hurtful things. If I do say something that hurts your feelings, please tell me. Don't keep it in. Don't let it build. I'll own it. And she's kind of quiet. I go, I've already done it, right? She goes, uh-huh. And she told me this thing about we were measuring where to put a towel rack or something. And I probably said something to her like I'd say it to a guy, But she was a girl, and it hurt her feelings. And I said, that was hurtful. I apologize. So we can be called into a higher consciousness. It may be say, ouch, that hurt. Did you mean it to? They may ponder it, and they go, maybe it did. Maybe I did mean to, because.
Would you do the same thing with a guy?
Yeah. Very much so. It's very disarming. And again, it calls calling you, because you're owning what's happening to you, and it's calling the other person to be more aware of the moment. And maybe they become aware that, I've been pissed at you. And that's when you can say, well, don't be passive aggressive. Just tell me. Let's deal with it. Yeah. Or if you go, ouch, that hurt. Did you mean it to? And you go, you're such a fucking baby. You're always crying all the time. Man up. I don't hang out with those people. I move on. There's my boundary. Because those are the professional boundary invaders that they think they should be able to do whatever they want and trot all over you. And you know a professional boundary invader because when you set a boundary with them, they act like you are offending them, that you are doing something, overstepping a boundary with them. And usually the place where we're most likely to find them is usually somewhere in our family. That's usually where you'll find the professional boundary invaders.
Sometimes having a boundary, I never thought about this either. It's not just about you stating your boundary, but you maybe investigating or helping somebody else with their boundary. Because if boundaries help us get closer to somebody,
they do.
Then by me expressing my boundary to you is a great gift to you, brings you closer to me. But also the mastery of boundaries is not just one-sided. I need to know where my string is that I put on the ground and keep you right at bay or whatever from overstepping. But I also need to know yours. I need to be curious about yours. I need to become a master of your boundaries so that I can get closer to you. So that's beautiful.
And it is a cooperative process. And I think when people care about each other, they want to cooperate in that.
Thanks for listening, fellas. If you want to hear more of Robert, he will be with us at Front Row Dads Live in Austin, Texas, December 4th through the 6th. Go to frontrowdads.com/live for more details. That's frontrowdads.com/live for details. And since you're listening now, you probably enjoyed this episode. So please think of one guy who is committed to growing as a man, a family man, and a businessman, and share this episode with him. Have a great day, fellas.